Hello, everyone. Thanks for attending the webinar today. My name is Melissa Schwartz, and I also have Sean Hygen with me. We are both from the education team here at Training Peaks. Our job at the education team is to help educate athletes and coaches on how to use Training Peaks, but we also are here to help educate just different things about the endurance world and endurance training and endurance racing. So we are super excited for today's webinar. Don't lose yourself before you start. Mental preparation for racing your best on race day. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Carrie Cheadle.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for being on the webinar today, and a big thank you to Training Peaks. I think it's really cool that they're not only sort of concerned with the physical side of your performance, but looking at the mental aspects as well. So I'm really excited to be able to talk to you guys today about what some of those things are, and that's really my job. Is just like you have your coaches that help you get optimally prepared physically, I get to help athletes get optimally prepared mentally. So, I help athletes on learning how to perform under pressure, how to prevent burnout and stay motivated through a long training season, all of the mental aspects that come into performing to your potential, both with training and with competition. And so I've been working with athletes for the past 10 years. I get to work with individual athletes all across the country. And then I also do workshops like this. I do webinars. I do in-person workshops, all helping athletes on how to perform more consistently by working on the mental aspects of their performance. So I'm really excited to be able to talk to you guys today about some of that stuff and go over So one of the things, a lot of the people that I work with, one of the things that they're challenged by is they feel like they psych themselves out before the race even starts, or they psych themselves out during their competition. So we're gonna, it seems, it's easy to think about, especially when you have a coach, like, well, what do I need to do in order to train physically to be ready to go, but we don't always think about or spend the time on mentally training to be optimally dialed in with your focus and confidence going into your race and during your race. So that's what I get to talk about with you guys today. So first, I kind of wanted to start with, why is it that we get nervous before competition? So what is it that gets your heart racing and gets those butterflies flapping around in your stomach? And it's, some of the nerves that we feel are really normal. Anytime you're faced with a situation that's new and you don't quite know what to expect, it's our body's way of getting us to pay attention to what's going on. So some of those nerves are really, they're to be expected and they're normal in those situations. So even if it's an event you've done before, but it's a new year, it's a different training plan, it's different conditions, anytime we're faced with something new, it's normal for us to have some nerves come up with that situation. The other thing that comes up around why, it's normal about why we get nervous before competition has to do with the fact that the outcome's important to you. So you spent, maybe you spent a lot of time and money and effort going into this training, and it's a big goal for you, and the outcome is important to you. So in that circumstance, it's going to be normal to feel that nervousness as well. And the other piece with that is that sometimes what we're actually feeling is excitement, but our interpretation of what's going on physically, we decide that it's anxiety. So that's another piece that's sort of in there. But although there's some nervousness to be expected, there's also sometimes where we feel an amount of anxiety that's actually detrimental to our performance. So when that happens, now it's you're either not prepared for your event, so you actually haven't done the training that you need to do or that you needed to have done in order to accomplish those original goals that you had set for yourself. And now you're faced with, in order to maybe alleviate the anxiety you're feeling, it's time to adjust your goal because you weren't able to do the training that you wanted to do originally. But sometimes it's not that you actually aren't prepared, it's that you feel like you're not prepared. So it's starting to doubt yourself and doubt your training, and those doubts come in, and sometimes that's what contributes to feeling anxious. So it's when we anticipate failure because we're afraid to fail. And we're really good, a lot of times we're really good at anticipating failure instead of anticipating success. So although there is a normal amount of kind of nervousness that comes, there's also a point where you do psych yourself out, and you do end up sort of taking yourself out of the race before the race even starts. So that's the piece that we're working on, is how do we get ourselves to a place where it's a sort of just a normal amount of activation in your body and excitement for the race day. So just to share a little bit about sort of what's happening in your mind and what's happening in your body when this is all going down. So what's actually happening when you're approaching your race day or your competition, you're facing a stressor basically, and that stressor is the race. It's when some sort of demand is placed on you, and then you have to assess whether or not you feel like you're able to meet that demand. And it's during that assessment when we feel calm and confident, or we start to feel nervous and anxious. So what triggers that has everything to do with your mind and whether or not you decide, yep, I'm ready for this, or oh my gosh, I don't think I'm ready for this. And a lot of those thoughts come in the what ifs. So when the what ifs trigger a stress response, so the what if might be, well, what if I'm not ready? What if I didn't train enough? What if I get dropped? What if I come out of the water last? What if my goggles get knocked off my face? What if I get a flat? So all the what ifs start. And those what ifs, when we assess, I don't know if I can handle that, that's when the stressor actually becomes stressful. So when it's normal for there to be a certain amount of pressure when it comes to getting ready for competition and actually competing, but that event the stressor doesn't have to be stressful. It only becomes stressful once we decide that it is. So that assessment piece has everything to do with whether or not we trigger our stress response. And once that happens, once you trigger that stress response, there's a corresponding sort of physiological effect that happens in your body. So when you feel that stress response being triggered, now you're experiencing an increase in heart rate, and some of you might even be feeling it right now. So if this response gets triggered in you easily, and just thinking about that event, so just thinking about, oh my gosh, I have an event coming up, I don't know if I'm ready, is going to increase your heart rate. So if you're feeling that right now, you're at the perfect place. You need to be in this webinar. So sometimes just thinking about it, and that stressor isn't even in front of us. That's how powerful our mind is. It's not even in front of us. We're just thinking about it, and we have an increase in our heart rate. So that's, you trigger the stress response. You're going to have an increase in your heart rate, an increase in muscular tension. You're more easily distracted, and you're much quicker to fatigue. So this is when you'll hear people say, you're burning matches before your race even starts. There's a very big truth to that. The amount of sort of activation that's happening in your body, you're burning energy before you even get into the water or before you even get onto your bike. So, when we talk about how can we use our thoughts in order to help improve our performance, it's not just because it can have an influence over where we choose to focus and how confident we feel, which is really, imperative for optimal performance, but it's also because there's a real physical effect to your body, the thoughts that we have when you trigger that stress response. So the other piece that happens is that when that response is triggered, you're going to have a decrease in coordination and a decrease in balance. So all of these things that are really important for optimal performance. So not only will you be burning your matches, but with that increase in muscular tension, your body is now not working as efficiently as it can. It gets in the way of you being able to do the motor skill that you need to do in order to perform your best as well. So there's a real effect both psychologically and physically when this is happening. So now we get to talk about, all right, so this is what's happening, so what do we do about it? How do we actually counteract this and do what you need to do in order to mentally prep so you do get to your race and during your race feeling confident and focused. So we're going to go through 5 different sort of essential tools that if you went through and you did all these things, you're going to feel leaps and bounds more prepared and more confident going into your race just by doing these 5 things. And the first piece there is making sure that you're choosing the right goal. So, and when I say that, I mean, there's different types of goals that you can choose, and the type of goal you choose is either going to contribute to the feeling of pressure and anxiety, or contribute to your feeling calm and in control of what's happening. So outcome goals are, they're basically goals that focus on the results or the outcome of the event. So when you set a goal that's, maybe it's like you want to beat the last time you rode on this course, or you raced this course, you want to beat the time from that time. Or it might be that you want to get into top 20 or top 15, or you might want to beat a particular person. So those are outcomes that you want to have, that you're hoping to achieve. It's an outcome goal. So sometimes when we only set an outcome goal, that can contribute to feeling more pressure, because it doesn't keep us in the moment of, well, what do I need to do right now in order to make that happen? So it's okay to have those outcome goals, but you really want to make sure that you're balancing them with a process goal. So your process goal is basically, well, what do I need to do in order to make that happen, in order to achieve that outcome goal? So a process goal is really looking at, in the moment, what do I need to be focused on? What do I need to be accomplishing in order to set myself up to be successful? And when you're focused on that process goal, you're more likely to get the outcome goal, because you're feeling less pressure, because you're just bringing your focus right to, what do I need to focus on right now? What do I need to be doing right now in order to get through this moment successfully? So, it might be, if you're racing, it might be positioning. So it's 5 laps to go, 4 laps to go. Where do I need to be? What position do I need to be on? Whose wheel do I need to stick with? If you're swimming, it might be you're focused on your breathing and your stroke, the technique of your stroke. So something that has to do with the process of what you're doing that helps you be successful in that moment and makes you more likely that you're going to accomplish that outcome goal. So the other piece in here with that you have to do with choosing the right type of goal. So it's okay to have the outcome goals as long as your focus is on the process goal. The other piece that's in here is a lot of times we also have a secret goal. So when I work with athletes, I'll tell them, so your stated goal, that's the goal that you tell me. That's the goal that you say, I just want to finish with the pack, or if I can just finish the Ironman, I'm going to be happy. But really, in the back of your mind, you have your secret goal of, yeah, but really I want to finish the Ironman in this amount of time. Or really, if I don't get top 20, I'm going to be pissed. So a lot of us, and I guarantee half of you right now are thinking about your event, and you're thinking, yep, I got a secret goal. So we all have those secret goals that are in the back of our head. And the reason this is so important is because you gauge your success based on that secret goal. So even if you tell me, I'm going to feel successful if I finish with the pack, if you're holding on to that secret goal, in the back of your mind, that's the goal that you're going to gauge your success on. So you could get through that race and finish with the pack and you accomplished your goal, but you don't feel successful. You don't feel good about that race because you're gauging your success on that secret goal. So it's okay to have those goals, but if you do find, oh, yep, I totally have a secret goal, the thing you need to do is figure out, is that secret goal your actual goal? Is that the goal that you really want to go after? And you're either afraid to say it out loud, because sometimes putting that out there makes us feel vulnerable. Well, what if I don't? That's what I want, but what if I don't get it? Or that secret goal, maybe it is something that you're holding on to, but you're not ready or able to commit to what it would really take in order to accomplish that goal. Or the other piece is you have that goal in the back of your mind because that's what you want, but it's just not realistic right now. So you need to really kind of figure out, is the secret goal the real goal, and am I ready to do what I need to do in order to make that happen? Or is my stated goal the real goal, and I need to make sure that that's the goal I'm gauging my success on? So just playing with that idea of making sure you're choosing the right type of goal, and also checking in with, all right, do I have a secret goal, and where is that? How is that going to play into how I feel when I get to the end of this event? Because that story that you tell at the end of your race or the end of your competition is a story that gets carried forward into the next event. So it's really, this piece is really important around sort of how am I gauging my success, and am I doing it based on, which goal am I doing it based on? So that's number one, choosing the right type of goal. So number two in your mental prep is to do your pre-race prep. So your event doesn't start at the start line. Your event starts when you start prepping for your race. So almost every athlete I work with, we're going through and creating their pre-performance routine to really dial in, not just what you need to be doing as you get closer to your event in order to feel optimally prepared, but also looking at how do I want to be feeling and what do I need to be thinking in order to accomplish that. A lot of times we talk about confidence during the event, but also your emotional state leading up to your event is really important as well. So by working on this piece of making sure you're doing your pre-race prep, we know that how prepared you feel for your event is going to have an influence over your level of confidence going in. If you feel like you have crossed all your T's and dotted all your I's going into your race, you're going to feel a lot more confident versus if you're thinking, man, if I had only done one more open water swim, or if I had only did my training plan the way I had it laid out. So when you feel prepared going in, you're more confident. And this takes that kind of piece to the next level. It makes sure that you're really dialing in that week before, even day before, night before going into your event. So it helps you to take ownership over your preparation and really not just leave that up to chance. It helps you when you do this piece, and I'll kind of explain what it looks like. It helps you, the other thing it does is helps you to focus on what's in your control and keep your focus right there on things that you have an influence over. It helps you to keep everything consistent. So one of the things that can happen when you're getting closer to your big event, sometimes we'll feel this need to do something different. Like we're feeling nervous and the big day is here and we're really excited about it, and so maybe we should do something a little bit different. And so it really helps you to look at, no, when I was sane and I had my wits about me, I wrote this out, this was my plan, and I trust that this is what I need to do to be ready to go. So it helps keep that consistency, especially the more that you do it. And then it helps conserve your mental energy. So you don't have to be making decisions and thinking about what should I be doing now. It's all written out right there for you. So this is what it looks like, your pre-performance plan. So you can see on there that there's different time frames that you have. So on this one it says, here's what I'm doing the day before, the night before, the morning of, an hour to race, 30 minutes, and then start. So those time frames, they might be different for you depending on what your event is and what your routine looks like. So what you can do is, one of the things sometimes I'll have athletes just brainstorm first absolutely everything you need to do in order to feel optimally prepared going into your race. So from making sure you've got directions to where you're going, you're hydrating the day before, maybe the night before you're pulling all your gear out, everything you need to do that you would be doing in order to feel optimally prepared. So the other piece that's in there is not just what you're doing, what you need to be doing during those time frames, but also ideally, how do you want to be feeling during each one of those time frames? So in your most sort of optimal place, how do you want to feel during those moments? And a lot of times there'll be a lot of crossover. So for a lot of the athletes I work with, I'll hear things like, I want to feel calm and confident, or I want to feel prepared, or I want to feel excited. And sometimes so there might be crossover between some of those optimally how you want to feel with the different time frames that are there. So you're looking at, this is what I want to be doing, and during that time, during that hour before the race, ideally I want to feel calm and confident, or ideally I want to feel ready to go. And then the other piece on there is the thinking piece. So in order to achieve that feeling, this is how I ideally want to feel in that moment. What do you need to be thinking in order to accomplish that? So what is it in that moment that you need to think in order to feel calm and confident? So maybe you're thinking, I'm prepared and I'm ready to do this. Or you might be thinking about one of your best past races where you feel like you did really well and you're visualizing that. So that piece might be, that's going to be a little bit different for everyone. So every once in a while I'll get a question where someone will be, so one of my athletes would be like, well, I don't want to be thinking anything. And I said, well, that's as wonderful as that sounds. It's pretty close to impossible. Not impossible, but it's really difficult to not think about anything. And usually when they say that, what they mean is, I don't want to be thinking about my race, because when I'm thinking about the race, I start to get nervous. So if you don't want to be thinking about that, what do you need to be thinking about, or what do you need to be doing in order to get the feeling that you want? So maybe you're listening to music, maybe you're watching a movie, whatever it is. So think about your past events, especially your best races ever. Think about those particular events and how did you feel going into that event. A lot of the athletes that I work with will tell me the best race I ever had, I wasn't even supposed to race that day. So I had no expectations, I was super relaxed, and I had the most amazing race. So think about how have you felt going into some of your best races, and how can you put some of those elements into your pre-performance plan to get you into that place? Do you need to have, dial in your playlist to get the right music in there, to get that relaxed feeling? Whatever it is that helps you get into that optimal emotional state as you're going into your race. So working on your pre-performance plan. So the next piece, number 3, so we've got choosing the right goal, we've got working on your pre-performance plan, and now we have going the extra mile. So with number 3, going the extra mile, no matter how close you are to your event, there are still things that you can do to help work on your level of confidence going forward. Whether you're 24 weeks out, or you're a week out, or you're a day out, there's still things that you can do that help influence your level of confidence. So here's a real sort of easy thing that, kind of tool that you can put in your tool belt that you can have that works on this. So at any point leading into your event, you can ask yourself, all right, so on a scale of 0 to 10, how confident do I feel right now in my ability to accomplish my race goal? So 0 to 10. You can even do this for yourself right now. Think about it right now. All right, my upcoming race, 0 to 10, how confident am I feeling in my ability to accomplish that goal? And no matter where you rate yourself, then you ask, okay, so what do I need to do in order to move forward 1 point, right? So you can't, so even if, say you scored yourself a 5, you can't move from a 5 to a 10 without moving from a 5 to a 6. Or maybe you don't even want to move to a 10. Maybe you're happy with an 8. Like if I could go into my event feeling 8, that's pretty good. So, but it doesn't matter where you rate yourself. In order to get to where you want to go, you still have to get that 1 point forward. And by doing that, a lot of times that helps us really to figure out what really is within my control. What's something small enough that I could actually accomplish in the time that I have left that is actually in my control, that would really help me move forward just 1 point. So if you're 24 weeks out, maybe it's, okay, I'm training for a triathlon, and I would definitely move 1 point forward if I hired a coach. That's going to help me improve my confidence. Or it might be you're 4 days out. So I had this happen with an athlete that was she was racing a time trial, and in the time trial there's a 180-degree turn. So we go through this process, and I say, okay, so what do you need to do in order to move forward 1 point? Well, if I could go, practice some 180-degree turns, I'd probably feel a little more confident. Okay, so when are you going to do that? Right? So a lot of times you know what you need to do to feel more confident. It's just having some accountability to go do it. So that's part of what I did for her was, okay, so when are you going to be able to go out and do your own sort of cycling skills clinic and go practice 180-degree turns? She came up with a game plan, figured out a place to go, and did it. And it had a huge boost in her confidence and had a really big impact on her race too. So 4 days out, there's still things you could do. 1 day out even, you could write out a list of your accomplishments, and write out your list of all of the reasons why you are ready for this race, and you are prepared and ready to go, or all of the things that you're proud of that you've done in the past, and have that list in front of you so you can read it, or visualizing one of your best performances. There's always something that you can still do that when you ask yourself that question that can help you move 1 point forward or even half point forward. So going the extra mile, whatever that is. I need to get in one more open water swim practice. I need to ride the course before. I need to visualize myself at the mass start of the swim, whatever it is. Thinking about what do you need to do in order to feel that much more confident, going the extra mile to take ownership over your own confidence, and that's how we work on that piece. So number 3, going the extra mile. So if you just did those 3, if you know your race is coming up and you're like, okay, what are the process goals? Doing X in order to work on my confidence. If you just did those 3 things, you're going to improve your feelings of confidence going into your event. But these next 2 that I'm going to talk about, number 4 and number 5, these are the ones that every athlete, I'm working on these 2. And they really, I think, out of all of them, could have the most sort of impact on how you feel before and during your race. So the next one is thinking like a champion. This is one of my favorite things to talk about with my athletes, this idea of how our thoughts have an influence over how we feel and the decisions that we make, and and just like we talked about in the beginning, it's how it triggers your stress response and how your thoughts really can either be beneficial or detrimental to your performance. So thinking like a champion, a lot of that whole idea of losing the race before you start has to do with number 4 right here and what we're going to talk about. And that first one on there, so number 1 is to trust yourself. So that gets back to like, am I feeding myself doubts? Am I doubting that how ready I am for this event? So trusting that you're ready to go. Trusting yourself, trusting your training, trust your race plan, trust your ability to adjust, trust your ability to meet any challenge that you face that day. Just really trusting that you have what it takes to do this, that you're here and you're ready to go. So that's one of the biggest things is trusting yourself. The second thing on there, and this is one of my favorite parts to talk about, the second thing on there is am I feeding the athlete? So when we talk about positive self-talk and sort of how our thoughts influence our behavior and how our thoughts influence our performance, when I explain this piece and how this works, I'll say, so all of us have a little monster on one shoulder, sitting on one shoulder, kind of feeding us doubts, like, I don't know, did you train enough? Are you really ready for this? And on the other shoulder, we have a little athlete that's like, you're ready to rock and roll. You've done your training. Let's do this, right? So all of us have one little monster on one shoulder and a little athlete on the other. And whichever one we feed is the one that's going to get stronger. And a lot of us are really good at feeding the monster and not so good at feeding the athlete. So if you think about the kind of discipline it takes for you to do your physical training, to get all of your training in so that you're ready to go, all of the decisions that you make in line with your goal that have to do with the physical piece, that kind of discipline, we are talking about the same kind of discipline when it comes to feeding the athlete. What are the thoughts that I'm feeding myself? And are these thoughts beneficial to my performance or are they detrimental? And we have more choice over that than we realize. So type of training today, or do I want to do that type? So we're always sort of making decisions that go in line with what we want optimally in order to accomplish our goal. We don't always think about it in this way as far as the thoughts that we're feeding ourselves. So making sure that you're feeding the athlete. And we don't want the monster to go away. That monster is actually really important. So when we get those little monster thoughts in our head, that helps us to pay attention. So there's something here that I need to pay attention to. So we don't want it to go away altogether, but we want the athlete to be the stronger voice. So making sure you're feeding the athlete. The other piece with thinking like a champion has to do with making sure that you're visualizing past success. So we're pretty good, this kind of goes along with the feeding the monster. Sometimes we're really good at when we think back to our previous events or even training, we're not thinking back on the things that went really well. We're thinking about the things that didn't go so well. So really choosing to, and this is something you could do, even sort of weeks leading up to your event, or even the night before or the morning of. This might be something that goes into that pre-performance plan where you're thinking about one of the best performances you've ever had, and really going through that whole performance and seeing yourself there and how amazing you felt and how strong you felt, and choosing to see that, to visualize that past success. And you can also visualize future success as well. So you can see yourself accomplishing your goals for the event that you have coming up, that you can see yourself, visualize yourself handling the obstacles that might come your way. So just in general, kind of, it's the, some of us are more visual thinkers and some of us are more sort of analytical type thinkers. So some of us kind of think more in thoughts, and then some think more in pictures. And so these two, feed the athlete and visualize past success, are linked in that way. So it's really, am I feeding the athlete, but am I seeing that as well? That's what that piece is. So with this kind of, what we're talking about now with thinking like a champion, that what you want to do is make sure that you're looking where you want to go. So when you're more likely to steer into the direction where you're looking. So if all your thoughts are looking at doubting yourself and what you're afraid of, you're steering in that direction. And if your thoughts are going towards, I worked so hard and I'm so excited to go after this, you're steering in that direction. So thinking about what you want versus what you don't want is a big part of what we're talking about here. And if you continue to feed yourself doubts, then you're going to continue to doubt yourself. So that's, when we talk about thinking like a champion, it's not that you just want to think about success, and it's not just that you want to sort of have happy thoughts, but that there's a real effect. Our thoughts have a very real effect on how we feel about ourselves and what kind of goals we choose to take on, and how we feel during our event. So it's not just positive thinking. It's sort of it's facilitative thinking. It's, what do I need to be thinking right now in order to feel confident in this moment, and have, what kind of thought do I need? Is this thought that I'm thinking something that's helping my performance, or is it something that's hurting my performance? And it's, a lot of times the thoughts that we have, they just come out of habit. So starting to think about, well, what's another way to think about this situation? And actually, the next thing we're going to talk about, number 5, is it'll get into this piece a little bit. So number 5 is race day focus. A lot of race day angst could be alleviated with this tool that I'm going to share with you right here. So this is sort of a key tool that you have, that you can use, that helps set yourself up to be successful in handling the challenges of race day. So, we all want our race to go. Wouldn't it be wonderful if your race just went exactly the way that you wanted it to go? But one of the beautiful, wonderful, amazing, exciting things about sport is that it doesn't happen that way. That part of being successful has to do with dealing with the challenges that come on race day. So this is a way to kind of beat your challenges to the punch, so to speak. So for every sport, there are critical moments that are a part of your sport. So those critical moments are times where it becomes really important for you to have your focus dialed in order to get through that moment successfully. So the first box there is, when is that critical moment? What is the situation? So, an example of that might be, I'm standing on the edge of the water getting ready for the mass start, or I'm about to approach the biggest climb of the race, or someone passes me on the run. So whatever that critical moment is, when is that moment? That's what the situation is. And then you're looking at, where does my focus need to be in that moment in order to get through that moment successfully? So for, if your critical moment is, I'm standing on the edge of the water and I'm getting ready to to start the swim of my triathlon. Your focus might be on your breathing, or maybe you're visualizing yourself staying calm as you're swimming through the water. Maybe you're visualizing your swim stroke. And then the last piece on there, the cue, is what do you need to do in order to make sure you get your focus where it needs to be. So the cue could be either a physical, some kind of trigger. It could be something that you say to yourself. It could be something that you look at. It's something that helps to remind you this is where my focus needs to be. So with that situation as the mass start, if what you want to be doing is focusing on your breathing, your cue, it could be something as simple as breathe. So another example, if the situation is, I'll see this one a lot with either cycling or running, like you could be feeling like you're having the best race of your life, and then all of a sudden someone passes you, and suddenly you're frustrated and angry and upset and questioning whether or not you're going to be able to accomplish your race goal, right? So getting past ends up being one of those critical moments. So then you want to think about, where does my focus need to be in that moment in order to get through that moment successfully? So you might be focused on your stride. You might be focused on just staying within yourself and racing your own race. So your cue that you develop is something that helps you keep your focus right where it needs to be in that moment. So when you actually write out all of the critical moments, what are those situations, when's the situation, where does my focus need to be, and how am I going to, what do I need to do in order to get it there? You're planning your response ahead of time. You're really helping yourself to think through those potential challenges ahead of time and know this is how I want to respond in that situation. So especially if you have situations, those critical moments where you're typically likely to react or to take that on as stressful, or react in a negative way, or it eats at your confidence, or you lose your focus in that moment. That can become a really strong neural pathway. Your if A then B, and that B is something negative, that can be really strong. So by doing this, you're starting to create a new neural pathway. You're starting to say, no, you know what, actually, when this happens, this is how I want to respond. So one of the reasons this piece is so important is that you're helping, you're planning your behavior ahead of time. So you're kind of telling yourself, this is how I'm going to react in that situation. And I'll show you an example of how it helps right here. So right here in front of you, you've got a nice, fantastic menu for a nice fancy restaurant. And think about, so how long is it going to take you to decide what you want to order off this menu? You got a lot of different options. You're trying to decide what you're in the mood for. Am I going to have dessert? How much do I want to spend? So there's a lot of different things. Not only are there a lot of options here on the menu, but there's a lot of things going on as far as trying to decide, what am I going to order? So if this is your menu, your decision is going to be much easier. You have two options. These are the only options you have. So when you remove options, you increase your reaction time. So by doing your critical moments, what you're doing is taking away, when you think through your critical moments and you plan your response ahead of time, you're eliminating options. You're eliminating the process time that it would take in that moment to figure out how you want to respond. So you're either, taking process time to figure that out, or you're going to that, whatever that automatic response has been. And if it's been something that's been negative, it's detrimental to your performance. So you're removing those options. You're telling yourself ahead of time, when this challenge comes, this is how I respond. And by doing that, the more options you have, the longer it's going to take to make that decision. The less options you have, the quicker your reaction time is going to be to make that optimal decision, to make the decision that is beneficial for your performance versus detrimental. So a few more sort of tips for that race day focus. Coming back to whether or not you have that secret goal, and making sure that you know your true goal for the day, especially when you're struggling or you're feeling challenged, or you are feeling nervous, like to really kind of step back and check in with yourself and make sure you know why am I here today? What's even the bigger goal? So if you step back even further to try and kind of gain some perspective on why am I actually here doing this race, and you step way back and you go all the way back to why did I even sign up for this event, or what got me inspired and excited to get into the sport in the first place. Sometimes doing that can help you gain some perspective that helps make that sort of mental shift that you need in order to relax and really just not just race your best race, but enjoy your time out there. I think a lot of times there's so much pressure and there's so much anxiety and there's so much there's so many different thoughts going through our minds that a lot of times we don't actually even stay in the moment and enjoy the race. So knowing that true goal can help with that race day focus. Also making sure that you're keeping your focus on what's in your control. So don't waste energy fighting against what's happening, especially if what's happening is something that's not in your control. So you're in control of your attitude and your ability to adjust. So really at different times, if you do find you're being hooked by something and it's affecting your confidence, or you're upset about something, that you're stepping back and going, okay, am I right now, am I focused on something that's in my control? And if I'm not, how can I shift and focus on something that's in my control? The other thing on here, associative versus dissociative focus. So in terms of race day focus, there's some people that use the technique of distracting themselves in order to get through certain moments of the race. And then there's some people that use associative focus, which is more like tuning into what's going on in your body. When you get to the point where you are pushing yourself to the max, like you're at that point where your legs are burning, you're either on the bike or you're on the run, your legs are burning, and you're getting close to the point where you're feeling like, oh my God, I don't even want to do this anymore. I don't want to be here anymore. So you're putting out max effort. When you're at that point, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to distract yourself from what you're feeling in that moment. So now, one of the more appropriate type of focus in that moment is going to be associative focus. So you're focused on your breathing, you're focused on your technique, you might be, or you're focused on some kind of repetitive mantra is another type of focus in that moment that's more effective for getting you through that moment. So you're either counting pedal strokes, you're counting your steps, you're repeating one mantra, one word to yourself over and over. So some kind of repetitive type of focus is more facilitative when you're really putting out that max effort. So thinking about that, if you think about, well, what are the times where I really am going to be pushing it? What could be my focusing, tool during that time? So thinking about that, is it more appropriate for me to kind of distract myself? And that there is a place for that. There's there's a lot of research that shows that with that type of focus, one of the things that it can do is help lower your perceived effort. So you're thinking about something else, and all of a sudden you're a mile down the road, and I didn't even notice that. So it does have its place. Associative focus in the research, both with runners and swimmers, it's been shown to help lead to a faster performance. So it kind of depends on what your goal is, what type of focus you want as well. But it's good to have both of those in your toolbox. And so then also having a race day mantra. So what's your go-to mantra going to be for the day? The thing that you always have with you, that you can go to during those times when you're struggling or you're challenged or you need to regroup and get your focus back. And the mantras that are the most effective are when it's something that's personally meaningful to you. So it's something maybe that in that one word or that one phrase, it encompasses more than that, and it shifts your emotional state. That's a key to that kind of race day mantra. It's something that helps you feel the emotion that you want to feel in that moment. So choosing that ahead of time, so you already have that go-to race mantra as you're getting ready for, as you're going into your event. So a lot of the things that we've talked about just have, with all 5 of these tools are just to help, a lot of it has to do with helping you stay in the moment. We're really good at time traveling. Like we tend to sort of time travel out into the future and you're thinking about the end of the race and what's going to happen, or we're time traveling into the past and we're thinking about a past race and how we did in that race. And so a lot of times we're everywhere else but right here in the moment. So a lot of these tools are to help us stay right here and do what we need to do right now in order to get through this moment. Because it's those what ifs and that stress response tends to get triggered when we are time traveling out in the future or back in the past. So there's a time for that. There's a really important time for that where you're sort of planning, you know, what are the goals that I want to accomplish and what are the things I would need to do, or you're reflecting and looking back at your race and going, well, what did work well and what would I change? But there's also a really important time to stay right here and do what I need to do right now and not worry about the past or the future, because all I have control over right now during my race is this very moment right here. So the last kind of piece before we start to wrap up here is this last final thought is that, you know, when it comes to your mental preparation, we are what we repeatedly do, and excellence is therefore not an act but a habit. So if you want to feel more confident and more focused going into your event, these are the tools that you have available to you to do it. So it's not, you know, I think there's a misperception that people that we perceive to be confident always feel confident. So once you get that, it's always there. But it's not one thing that we do. It's the prep that we do all the time that helps us to feel confident and focused going into our events, and making sure that we're not only, you know, it makes a lot of sense that you're doing what you need to do to be physically prepared to accomplish your athletic goals, and it's sort of obvious that you would need to do that. But we don't always think about, well, what do I need to do mentally in order to make sure that I'm prepared, so that I'm not letting the mental piece be the factor that holds me back. So when you put that much time and effort and energy into your training, you deserve to get the most out of race day, and that's what this piece helps you do, is to really work on that piece. So I think we're gonna do a little bit of Q&A here in a minute, but I just wanted to, if you're really into this, you know, kind of the mental piece and working on this part of your performance, I invite all of you to check out my website. I've got a blog on there, so I'm writing, you know, there's articles, there's blog posts, I'm writing all the time about this part of your performance, of really how to, you know, all kinds of tools and different things to make sure that you're working on your mental game so that you can get to that finish line knowing that you did actually give it everything that you had. You can, on the website, the other thing you can do is sign up for my newsletter. If you get on my email list, you'll get a monthly newsletter with mental skills training tips, and then you'll also get special offers and see, you know, what different webinars or workshops I have coming up. And the other thing that I'm really, really excited about that I just launched today is that I have a book coming out late summer. It's called On Top of Your Game, and we just launched a pre-order option on my website today. So if you want to pre-order that book, you actually get you get a little bit of a discount on the book and free shipping, and then when the book comes out late summer, I'll send it off to you if you want to pre-order that book now. So I'm super excited. So if you liked the webinar, you will love the book, because it'll take you through some of the things that I talked about today, and it actually has a worksheet. It'll have online access to some of the worksheets, so the pre-performance plan and the critical moments. Like, you'll get access to worksheets that you could actually just plug your answers into that stuff. So that's all that stuff on my website. And you can also connect with me on social media to learn more and work more on this part of your performance. And so I think now we're gonna go. We're gonna do a little bit of Q&A.
Well, Carrie, thank you. Questions. So we're only scheduled for 10 more minutes of questions. I think we'll go over a little bit. If anyone has to drop off, you know, after the 60-minute mark, go ahead and do that. You can always listen to the recording. We will send an email out with a recorded link. And any questions that we don't have enough time to go through, we're going to put together a little write-up, and it's going to be a summary of questions and some answers from Carrie. So you can also keep an eye out for that. It'll probably be about a week until we get that out, but we will at some point get all the questions addressed. So I'll go ahead and just ask you the first one. And a lot of these you kind of went through, but I think people really appreciate hearing what you have to say about real life examples. And many of these questions were asked over and over again. So the first one is, how should coaches address secret goals? So you talk about an athlete and how athletes address them, but what about coaches and their athletes? How do they address secret goals?
That's a really, really good question. So as a coach, and it's tough too because, one of the things that happens with coaches is that sometimes, depending on your relationship with your athlete, they're not always going to tell you if they have a secret goal because they don't want to disappoint you or they're afraid of what you might think. And so, it's challenging because sometimes I'll get to share the secret goal because, the relationship is different. So when you do have that, though, talking about it in that way that it's normal to have that it's okay to have that, and that talking about it helps to really figure out whether or not that secret goal is something they really want to go after, and is that something that you can help them do through the coaching that you're doing, or can you have that conversation and through that conversation help them to realize that secret goal isn't realistic for them right now, and that's okay too. But the thing that's tough sometimes with with that piece is that our beautiful fragile egos kind of can get in the way with that piece also. So when you have that really open conversation about it, that like this isn't good or bad, it's not it's not bad that you have an unrealistic goal right now. It's that this is something that you're wanting and you're excited about it. So being able to approach it that way, where it's like this isn't good or bad to have a secret goal. It just is. We all do it. I do it, and I know this. Like I talk to athletes about this all the time, and I still do it. So it's just checking in with that and having an open conversation with your athlete about it to help them kind of make those connections instead of you coming in and saying, oh my God, what are you thinking? You can't do that right now. So but having the conversation so that together you can kind of get to that point.
Okay, this next question was, we had a handful of people ask it. How do you choose a mantra, and can you give a couple examples?
Oh, yeah, that's a really good example. So, sometimes it'll just come to you. Like sometimes you'll be in the middle of a race and something will come to you and it works, and that's okay too. Other times it's a couple of just personal examples. Like one, I was doing an adventure race, and I read a horoscope going into the race, and for whatever reason, I don't even remember why, but in my horoscope it told me that my mantra was big green luck everywhere. So I was like, oh, I am taking that and I'm running with it. So it's, it can just be something that makes you smile. It could be your favorite line from a funny movie, because that shifts how you feel, and just anything that makes you laugh helps to relax you in that moment. But sometimes it's just, it could be something that's very, very simple. Like it could be I'm strong and I'm a strong swimmer if you're nervous about the open water swim. So it doesn't, the ones that are personally meaningful do have a greater impact on you. But to start, it might be something really simple as far as like, I'm prepared and I'm ready for this race, or I'm excited to race today. So something, that I'm excited to race today can be a really powerful one, because it helps us while we're racing remember that I choose to be here, that I want to be here and I'm ready to be here, no matter how hard it is, no matter what comes today, I am excited to race today. So it's, there's, and a lot of times it'll just come to you. It's nice to be able to think about something ahead of time, but sometimes it'll hit you like a ton of bricks, and you're like, oh, that's it. That's what I need to say to myself today.
Thanks. As far as athletes who want to jump up to the next level, or if someone's going from a half marathon to a marathon, so they've never done that distance before or that specific race, do you have any suggestions on how to develop that pre-performance plan if you don't have experience actually doing that race?
Yeah, that's a good question. So you can, if you have a coach, your coach is a great resource for you to be able to kind of talk about, well, what's my, sort of optimal preparation going into a marathon when I haven't done that before. You can also, talk to other people that have done a marathon. So if you have any friends or even jumping onto social media and asking people in different running groups, what's their approach for that. So, using the resources that are out there, that's one really great thing. And then, specifically with the pre-performance plan, what you do before, some of the things that you do as far as the mental prep before a half marathon versus a marathon, some of it might be the same. So if you're thinking about how some of the more sort of physical or hydration or nutrition or those pieces, think about who's in my network that would have the answers to some of this, and then also pairing that with what works for you. So this is one of the questions I'll get asked a lot, that can be challenging when you're working with a coach and you've got this is the optimal training plan for you to be ready for your marathon. But if you there's all different there's a lot of different ways to get to that same point. So sometimes I'll have athletes that they're not running the full length of the marathon leading up to it, and they're really, really nervous about that, and they question it. So then you're looking at, does it make more sense to be able to just trust yourself and trust that your coach knows what they're doing? Trusting in your coach is a huge piece. Trust that your coach knows what you're doing and you're going to be ready on race day. Or if it's really messing with your head, you need to talk to your coach and say, I feel like I need to run the full length in order to know that I can do it. So that's the piece that's hard sometimes is with this mental piece, is that there might be an optimal physical way to train, but if your brain's going to take you out of it, your head's going to take you out of it, that optimal physical way doesn't matter anymore. You need to be able to figure out both of those pieces. So reach out to your network and talk to other people about the best way to prep when you're moving up to that next level.
All right, thanks. The next question is, my heart rate is already 15 to 20 beats per minute higher before the start of a race. How do I control this?
That's a great question. We didn't talk about that a lot in this particular webinar, but one of the greatest tools you have for working on lowering your heart rate is your breath. So, any kind of, if you can go work on diaphragmatic breathing, so that you're actually, using your diaphragm in a way where it's allowing the most oxygen to come in and a slow exhale. So that's just one tip. So in general, when people say, take a deep breath, it's not taking a deep breath that helps lower your heart rate and calm things down. It's it's the long, slow, controlled exhale that does that. So really consciously, and that's a skill. That type of breathing and these breathing techniques, that's a skill. So if you want to be able to use it during the race, it's something that you need to have had developed ahead of time. So that's one of the best things that you can do, is working on that breathing. It's one of the greatest things to sort of counteract and lower the heart rate. And then it's also, what are the thoughts that might be triggering that stress response that would contribute to that as well, and dialing that piece in. That's a great question.
Thanks. Okay, I'm just going to ask a couple more questions and then we'll be finished. I think this one might be answered with everything you talked about with critical moments, but for triathletes that are really strong in one leg of the sport, so let's say swimming, for example, and as the race goes on, they lose their fighting spirit because people are passing on and their strongest leg is already finished, especially at the end. How do athletes get over this? How do they overcome it?
Yeah. Oh, man, that's a really, really good question. It is challenging when the strongest part is already done. So with triathlon specifically, it's challenging because you do have these, these three different sports within the sport, and it's just every triathlete has their strength and has their challenge. So you really have to think about it as a whole, that instead of thinking about it that, well, it's all downhill from here because I already had my best event or had my best leg, that this is part of it. So, and with triathlon too, each one of those segments is you're going to have your own sort of specific goals for each one of those. So making sure too, comes back to that goal piece of, well, what is my goal for the running piece? And if the whole time I'm just thinking, this is the leg that is pulling you back and holding you down, you're going to be miserable. And then that sort of taints the entire race. So instead, to think about, well, what is my goal for the run? So kind of accepting that this is where I am, and this is where I am at. So what do my goals need to be for this part of the race? And really making sure that you're sort of gauging your success on goals, specific goals for that part of the event. So instead of seeing it as this thing that's ruining your entire race, it's, well, what am I working on in this part of the leg, and what would feel like is successful, and not compared to other people. I think that's the biggest piece, is that when we're just comparing how we're doing, or gauging our success in comparison with others versus in comparison with where am I at today and where do I want to be tomorrow and where am I tomorrow, it can mess with us. So really making sure that you're staying within your own goals that you set for yourself, and being okay with the fact that there are going to be people that are better than you, and there are going to be people that are worse than you, and there are going to be people that pass you. And that's something that's going to continue to happen. So working on that piece, knowing that, like, this is a part of racing. People are going to pass me. So how can I work on this piece so I don't let it be a factor?
Okay, I'm gonna save time for two more questions. And this one, it might be really out of the blue. You didn't really talk about it, but it's different than all the other questions that were asked. So it came from someone who ran a marathon, and she wants to know what you think about hypnosis. So she was hypnotized before a marathon and ended up running her first and only PR. Is this something, if it works for an athlete, you would encourage?
Yeah, I mean, like, so that, it's interesting. With all of this stuff, I'll tell people, like, it's kind of like, there's so many different tools out there that you have available to you to be able to work on this stuff. So it's kind of like cafeteria style. So you go to the cafeteria and you're like, I'm not really into the peas, but I think I'm going to try the carrots today. And then maybe the next day you're like, well, someone else told me the peas are really good, so I'm going to go for it. So it's if you want to try it and you feel and you're curious about it, absolutely. I think it's a fantastic tool that you can do. And I know some people that have done it and really liked it, and some people that did it and it wasn't for them. So it just and you're not going to know until you try it. So if it is something that you're thinking about doing, I say, yeah, absolutely, go for it.
All right, and then the last question is, I think you mentioned something about ultra races. So the last one is about a 100-mile race. So the person asked, many times a race is short enough to focus on the entire time, but this person is a 100-mile runner, and at times she finds there are very low points during the competition, and sometimes it's hard to even come out of it, especially all the way up to the end. So do you have any insight that you can provide to help get out of that slump for those really, really long races where you would expect to have ups and downs?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, and you're right. So part of it is just knowing that that's going to happen, and and sort of almost recognizing it when it is happening. That it's like, oh, okay, I'm going through one of those low points, and it won't be here forever. That I will get through it. And then it's figuring out, with that kind of race, you're wanting to have a lot of different sort of focusing tools in your tool belt so that you can figure out, what is it that I need right now, because it's so long. There isn't just one thing that's going to work for you. So it's having all of those different, I've had, people will sing to themselves. I've had people that, like, they'll here's this one guy, it was, it wasn't a 100-miler, he was doing a marathon, but he'll, like, as he's kind of running around people, he just imagines things about them, like, what did they have for breakfast, and what's their family like, and so, there's different sort of, we talked about associative and dissociative. When you're doing a 100-mile race, there's going to be some dissociative types of focusing techniques that you're going to employ, that's sort of those distracting techniques. So, and then it's, so it's, a lot of it is just, having a lot of different things in your belt and thinking about that ahead of time. And sometimes people will have like a plan for, okay, when I hit mile 25, that's when I get to think about X. Like, this is the topic I'm going to think about during that time. I'll have some people that'll do that, like at 25, 50, and 75. So they don't think about whatever it is, and they know once they get to that point, they get to think about it. So and then other times it's just really being in the moment and feeling your body and looking around at where you're at and feeling proud about what you're doing. So it's there definitely isn't one thing that you want to have a lot of different tools in your tool belt. So when that low time comes, there's different things that you can choose in order to shift your focus. Thinking about your favorite funny movie or your favorite comedian, but also knowing that those times are going to come when you have a race that's that long, and that's okay.
Okay, great. Well, that's all the time we have right now. Like I said, we're going to collect the questions that were answered and also the questions that we didn't have time for, and we're going to put together some type of article or blog post about it. And we'll send an email out to everyone and let you know once that's out there, because even while Carrie was answering questions, we had a ton more questions come in. So thank you so much, Carrie. It was a great presentation and very, very informative, and we really appreciate you taking time out of your day to come and do this for us. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.